Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Chris and this is the first of the month collaboration and the theme is Love is in the Air. More on that later, so let's begin. DIY number 1. So I've got one of these wood pallets that I have picked up from the Dollar Tree, and I have a whole bunch of them. I need to do something more with them. But I've also got some of these wooden stickers that I believe I also got from the Dollar Tree, but I just want to make sure that I remove those little sticker tabs off the back of them. And then I got this scrapbook paper pack that I had gotten from Hobby Lobby, and I believe I'm going to use this right here. Look how pretty that is. But I want this paper to go on top of my hearts. I figured it would just dress them up a little bit better than just painting them. So I'll just first start by taking my hearts and just tracing them on the back of my paper. And I'm going to do this to all 5 of them. And then once I got those drawn on there, I'm just going to trim this paper down, but I am going to go ahead and I'm going to grab my glue stick and I'm just going to rub the glue stick onto my paper around where the hearts are drawn out and just place my wood pieces right there. And I'm going to do this to all 5 of them, and then I'm going to let that glue dry. And then I'm going to go ahead and go in with my X-Acto knife and I am going to just cut those hearts out using that. This is just going to give me a little bit more of a closer cut, and I think I was kind of thinking I can get away from sanding these down, but I do end up sanding them down a little bit anyway, so just get them as close as you can, and then we can go ahead and use that sander and get any remaining off. And there wasn't a whole lot of paper to have to sand off using that X-Acto knife, just doing a little bit to tidy them up. And once we're finished with those hearts, I'm going to go ahead and grab my palette and I'm going to give it a sand. And then I'm just going to grab some of my Americana gel stain in the color Walnut, and I'm going to add it to a cup, put a little bit of water in there, and I'm just going to stain this. And I'm going to put the stain all over, wipe back any of that excess. And I'm also going to make sure I get in between the little slats. I am also going to go ahead and do the back of it. And once I got that stain all dried down, I am going to take the color Vintage Linen from DIY Paint, and I'm just going to do a dry brush. The brush I use is a chippy brush, and it's got very stiff bristles on it. Now I'm just going to get an idea of how I want these little hearts to lay on my palette. I just kind of want them to appear like they're just hanging down. And I think something like that's going to look very nice. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some painter's tape. Now, do not do this, okay? Do not do this. You'll see why in a minute, but at least don't do this until you put a sealer on top of those hearts. But I used that tape just so I can kind of keep them in the area I want. It didn't work that great, so I kind of had to shift them around. And when I get them on there, I just kind of put them back up there to see if that's how I like them, and I do. So I am just going to grab my jute string and some hot glue, and I am just going to go around those hearts, attaching that jute string. And I do leave some excess off of both ends. And once that glue's dried, I flip it over and I go to remove the painter's tape, and it starts tearing my paper I just Mod Podged on. So I am trying to be as careful as possible to remove that. I do get a few spots on the edges that tore, but that's okay. I come up with a fix for that. Yeah, I'm probably cursing myself right now doing this part, so you know. All right, so to fix that, I'm going to grab some of this oxide distressed oxide. There you go. I couldn't think of what it was called there for a second. And I'm just going to take a little spongy dauber and dip it into that ink, and then I'm going to go over especially the spots that tore and along the edges, and I am going to give it some distressing. And when that ink settles on the paper part that tore, it looks really good. So this worked out very well, thank goodness, because I was really cursing to the stars, I tell you. But hey, like I always say, we live and we learn. And that one little piece there was torn, and I was like, do I glue it back? No, I'm just going to tear it and I'm going to distress it. All right, so now before I do anything else, I am going to grab my Mod Podge and I am going to seal these hearts. And I tell you what, if there's one thing I'm learning, I am definitely the one to watch if you want to see what mistakes to avoid. Because I don't know what it is, but here lately, it's like everything I do, I mess up in some shape, form, or fashion, and I've got to fix it. So, hey, if you want to see what not to do or how to fix it, then keep on watching. But I'm also going to go ahead and put a coat of that sealer on our palette. And just making sure to get the edges, and I'm not going to worry about the back. Next, I've got some of this fabric that I had used at Christmas time, and I am just going, they're 1 inch thick, so I'm going to cut them down to 1/2 inch thick, but I am just going to snip and tear. And then I've also got some lace, and I thought, hey, I'm going to see, will this tear the same way? So I snipped, and yeah, no, that does not work. So I just went ahead and trimmed off the little snag I created and just cut that down in half. Then I've just got some cotton lace ribbon that you can find at the Dollar Tree. If you're lucky, it's hit or miss with that one, I believe. But I am going to go ahead and I'm going to take and I'm going to cut it in half. I just want small little pieces of ribbon because this palette is small. So I want to make a little messy bow and it's going to need to be small. But I've got some of this. It looks like coffee stained fabric and it didn't want to tear. I know it will tear, but I don't know. Maybe I didn't grab it right. So I try again. And yeah, it just did not want to tear. I don't know what's going on. So I tried the other end and I tell you, it's something else. So I'm just going to try to snip me some off of there. And whatever I can salvage, I'll just throw in my pile. And I'm thinking I'm going to need all those pieces about this size. So I'm going to trim everything that I've got here down to this size. I'm not sure what the length of it is. And then I'm just going to gather my pieces and I'm just going to make an X with them. And I'm sure you can alternate the pieces. I'm putting the same for the X, the same pieces for the X I'm using, but I'm sure you can alternate. But I'm going to grab some jute twine after I get that all together, and I am just going to go ahead and tie it right down the middle. And I'm just going to, before I knot it up, I'm going to make sure it looks okay. When it does, I'm going to go ahead and knot that up. I'm going to go ahead and grab my palette and I'm going to see how much of this I'm going to need to trim off. So we're going to go ahead and trim the ends up. And I just start with a little bit at a time because you know, you can't add, but you can take away. Going to kind of fluff it out there a little bit. And I think that looks so pretty. Oh, I love messy bows. And we're just going to trim a little more. And I kind of go at a little bit of a rounding type motion around the ribbon. Let's see how I'm just kind of spinning it and going in a round motion. I'm sure there's a better way to say that, but you know, I'm a little lost for words today, I think. All right, and then I have one of these little metal buttons that I picked up from Hobby Lobby, and I find most of my buttons in the clearance section. Not most of them. I always look in the clearance section at Hobby Lobby because a lot of times you can get a pack of buttons for like 49 cents. So always check there. So I am going to be using that. And then I went ahead and grabbed some of this paper. This is resume paper that I have had since I was probably like 23 years old. Okay, so I've had it for a long time. But I just want to use this paper to make a tag because it's already got a little bit of a rustic look to it. And here I'm trying to make a tag and I don't do too well freehanding it. So I have some of these little wood tags and I'm going to grab one out of its pack, put it on my paper and trace that out and then cut that out and it'll just look a lot better. So, but yeah, it's hit or miss when it comes to me drawing. It really, truly is. I have a good day, I can draw and I'm like, wow, did I do that? And then I'll have another day and I'm like, yeah, that's more like it. But hey. All right, once I got that cut out, I am just going to take a paintbrush with some water on the tip of it and just start tearing around the edges because I want this paper to look extremely rustic, like extremely. Then I'm just going to grab some more of my distressed oxide And just a little paintbrush. I love these paintbrushes. They're really coming in handy. If I think about it, I'll link them in my description box. But I'm just going to go ahead and I try to use the brush and brush over it. And I was like, well, I'm just going to go ahead and dip this paper in there. So, you know, no rhyme or reason. I just want this to look old. This paper to look old. I'll crinkle it up a little bit. And I love how after you crinkle it up, if you dip it in that on that ink pad, how that ink grabs onto the little areas on the paper that you crinkled. I like that. That looks so amazing. All right, once I have that, like, I'm happy with, I am just going to handwrite the word love. At first, I was going to put Be Mine, and I was like, no, that's just too big. I don't like it. And I try to make Valentine's decor that I can keep up for the most part all year round. I have a guest room. It's got that shabby chic kind of style that I'm trying to build into it. And, you know, these little items like this, you can keep up all year. So I just try to make stuff like that. But I'm just going to handwrite the word love on it the best I can. Of course, after I did it and after I put this paper on my sign, I thought, you know, you could have just grabbed out some stamps because I had just scored some stamps from the thrift store, these little bitty stamp letters. And I was like, you could have used those. So, okay, maybe next time. All right. And then I just thought the love was a little too harsh. So I just thought, okay, well, maybe if I go over it a little bit more, maybe it'll smudge it up a little bit. So I'm just going to go back over it with some more of that distressing ink or oxide, distressed oxide, goodness gracious. And this piece of paper really looks like it fell in the mud and got stomped on and dried off. And so it definitely looks old and worn. All right, so before I do anything else, I'm just going to put a little hanger on here. And well, I first put the hanger on. I did end up having to remove it because when you hold it up, it didn't hang right. So right on the inside of those vertical little boards, just on the inside of them, put your glue there and put your hanger there. And then next, I'm just going to flip it over and I'm going to start putting this all together. So I'm going to trim off that excess jute twine from our little messy bow, which I am in love with. I'm going to go ahead and hot glue that button on. And on the button, I didn't film it, but I did put some baker's twine through the little buttonholes and then just tied it off and trimmed it. So it looks like it's got some thread in it. I'm going to grab our little heart banner. And I'm just going to figure out how to attach these. All right, so that looks good. Let's go ahead and attach our bow. And I'm going to pop it right there with some hot glue. I'm going to go ahead and grab the little tag. Make sure it fits before I glue anything else. And it does. And instead of using hot glue on it because it's paper, I'm just going to use some Eileen's tacky glue and tack that down in a few little spots. And this stuff dries really quick. And you don't get the little clumpy bumpy that you're going to get from your hot glue. And you don't burn your fingers. All right, then I'm just going to grab the ends of the twine and I'm going to pull them around to the back side. And then I'm just going to hot glue those in place on the back side. But before I do that, I'm going to glue the hearts down with some hot glue. And I'm just going to glue them. I'm just really just putting one little dot of glue on the heart just to tack it down to keep it in place. Okay, maybe more than a little bit of a dot. I just want them to stay in place, okay? And then once I get those glued down, then I'll flip it over and I'll go ahead and glue the twine on the back side. And like I said, it just makes it look like it's a little banner. And then after I get that glued down, this project is complete. And you guys will have to let me know what you think about this. All right, and as I mentioned in the beginning, this is the first of the month collaboration, which is hosted by Rustic and Lace DIY and Krista's Crafty Life. This is my first time participating in this collaboration, and I hope to do more. And I will have the links to the host's channel in my description box, along with a playlist with all of the other crafters that will be participating. So make sure you go and check that out and show some support. And I hope you will consider hitting that that subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you have, hey guys, thank you so much for becoming part of my DIY family. Now let's continue. DIY number 2. All right, so I got this little wooden love sign from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to start by removing the tag. And I am going to try my best to sand this down. This thing is rough. It's got a lot of splintering, so I want to get that as smooth as I possibly can. Next, I'm just going to grab my Americana gel stain, and this is the color Walnut. And I'm just going to add a little bit of water to a cup with my gel stain, and I am just going to brush on my stain with a little paintbrush. And after I get that stain on there, I'm just going to wipe any of the excess back. I don't want this piece too terribly dark. And this little brush I've got comes in a 3-pack in 3 different sizes. And I really like them. I have 2 sets. I bought one set to use for waxing, and then I bought another set to use for paint. And the bristles on this just make it so much easier to get down inside of these letters or inside of something even smaller. Next, I've got some of these little wooden hearts on a bamboo stick, and I picked these up from the Dollar Tree. I have 2 different colors, and I'm just going to go ahead and use the red. But I'm going to take that stain we made up, and I am just going to stain the little stick pieces. Now the stain is not going to stick very well to these bamboo pieces, but you know, it is what it is. It did darken it up just a little bit. Now next I want to put these sticks into the top part of the love. So right here I'm just going to line them up on how I want them to sit so I know how much shorter to cut those sticks down to. And after playing around with it for a little while, I finally decide I like the way that looks. And I'm just going to grab a Sharpie and lift that love sign up just so I can mark where I'm going to cut. And I cut at a little bit of an angle. That way it just helped make it a little easier to put through the holes that I'm going to be creating. And I was going to try to use my little picking tool, but I was afraid I was going to break the little picking tool off or I was going to crack the wood. So I am going to grab my drill and a drill bit. And I started with the smallest drill bit, but found that to be just a little too small. So I did up it to the second to the smallest drill bit. And then right there on the top of the L, I am just going to drill a hole. Make sure the stick fits in that one. It does. So then I'm going to go above the O and I'm going to do the same thing. Now, you got to be careful because these are going to want to split. And that's what it started to do. It started to split. So I was like, okay, how can I prevent this from happening? And the only thing I can come up with is to squeeze that O together really tight and drill very, very, very slowly. Just do this with caution and be careful. And I am going to drill the holes on top of the 2 V spots. And again, it's very fragile, so just take your time and do this very slowly, squeezing those letters together so they don't want to split open. And then I'm going to put one on the top of the E as well. And I'm going to grab my hearts and start putting them in those little holes that we created, making sure I get them in the right spot. And I did find 1 or 2 of them, I think I cut a little too short, but that's okay. It still looked fine in the end. I'm just rearranging them on how I want them glued in. And once I get it to the way I like it, I am going to arrange them down in front of my sign so I know where to put them when I grab my glue. Okay, next I've got some of this lace I had picked up from the Dollar Tree last year, and I still have yet to do anything with it, so I was like, this is where we're going to use it. So I'm just going to fit this along the bottom ledge below the letters. There you can see a little bit better. And I am going to use some Eileen's Turbo Tacky Glue. And I'm just going to go along the corner of that ledge. I'm going to smooth it out just a little bit with my fingers. And I'm going to take that cotton lace there and just place it down and tap it into the glue. And then I'll just run some more towards the end there, tapping it into the glue. And before I trim off any of the excess, I'm going to go ahead and allow that glue to dry down and trim it off. Next, it's time to go ahead and glue these hearts into place. And I'm going to use my Star Bond medium thickness glue. And I'm using this because when you buy this, they come with these very small little applicators you can put on the top. And these were just the right size to put down in those little holes. So I'll just squirt a little bit of that in the holes and then place my little heart sticks in those holes. And this project is so easy peasy. Once I get these sticks in there and it dries, this project will be complete. DIY number 3. All right, so I have one of these little crates from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just realizing how rough some of these Dollar Tree pieces are because I have got to sand this one down too, which I've already done. And then I'm just going to grab some of my Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint, and I am going to give this one coverage all the way around the box. And I'm also going to do the bottom and the inside. And once I've got that complete, I did go around the edges with a little sander and I sanded those up just a tad bit. Now I've got this vintage scrapbooking paper I had found on Amazon, and oh my God, guys, this has some beautiful paper in it. It is a nice filling paper. If you've ever used recycled paper, that's what this paper feels like. But I will definitely link this in my description box if you're interested. But I'm going to grab just a few of the papers out, just trying to figure out how and what I want on my box. And once I find my piece, I am just going to flip it over and trace it on the box. That way I know where to cut. And then I am just going to repeat this process on the back side and on both sides. Then I'm going to grab my matte Mod Podge and I'm going to go ahead and Mod Podge those pieces of paper onto my box. And I'm going to do the front and the back side first, let it dry, and then sand those edges down. And then that way I can move on to the sides and let that dry and sand those edges down. It just made more sense to me to do it that way. And once I've got that paper on, it's time to deal with the little slots on the sides of the box. And I'm just going to grab my X-Acto knife and I'm just going to trim that out. And once I get that paper cut out of there, I am going to look for the smallest sander I have, and that happens to be my nail file, even though it's still a little too thick to fit perfectly into that slot. But I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm just going to kind of work that sander around the inside edges of that slot, removing any of that excess paper. And this did a pretty good job, but if you have something smaller, definitely grab that. And then just to make sure that all that paper is stuck down there, I'm going to take some more Mod Podge inside that little slot and I'm just going to go around it. Next, I'm going to grab my Distressed Oxide, and I have been using the color Vintage Photo if you're interested. But I'm going to go around all of the edges with that ink pad, and I just love the way this looks. It just gives it so much more definition and character in my opinion. But if you don't like the distressing, then don't do it. I mean, this is just something I like to do sometimes. Sometimes I don't. It just depends on the project. And since that little pad will not fit in those slots, I'm just going to grab my little dauber there and I'm going to dip that in the ink and just go around it with a dauber. And then I took that little dauber and I went around the edges with it as well, just to give it a little bit more shadowing. And once I've got all that ink dried down, I am going to go over this entire box with some Mod Podge. Well, not the entire box, just wherever I laid out the paper. Next, I've got one of these little tart pans in a heart shaped. I had picked these up off of Whatnot in an auction. And then I'm going to use some more of that scrapbooking paper. And I am just going to try to cut out a heart to fit in the bottom of this little tart pan. And let me tell you, that was not very easy. So as I cut, yeah, I even tried to line it up with the back side. I guess because it's so rounded, it was just very difficult. So I tried to follow the roundness around the paper, and well, I got way off there. But when I eventually got it cut down, there was just a little piece missing from the inside of that pan. So I just cut me out another little piece to attach right next to it. And then to attach them, I just use some Mod Podge. And when I'm Mod Podging little pieces like this, I like to use my brush that has the Mod Podge on it to pick up my little pieces of paper and lay it on the surface. It's just very easy instead of trying to pick up those little pieces with your fingers. So just a little tip there. But like I said, I'm just going to cover that with the Mod Podge. I should have let it dried, but I didn't. I got a little ahead of myself. I'm going to go ahead and cover the sides with more of that Mod Podge. And then I'm going to grab my cinnamon, and I'm just going to sprinkle my cinnamon all over the top side of it. And then that's when I realized, oh, I should have let this part dry. Now I've got the cinnamon on top of my paper, and I want my paper to be seen. So I tried to rub it off with my finger, and then instead I just grabbed a clean brush and just brushed it off of that paper we just placed down. And that worked out pretty well. And then I just took a little thicker brush, and I thought, well, I'm going to remove a little bit of the cinnamon from around the heart. And then I just ended up putting more cinnamon in there and then using that brush from the get-go instead of my finger. That way it just looked a little neater. And then I'm just going to apply some Mod Podge to the back of the tart. And I do not add any to the flat surface of it. But then I'm going to sprinkle more cinnamon on it. And after I do this section and tap it off, I'm going to let that sit and dry, I think. I do use my little clean paintbrush to wipe away, make sure that flat surface isn't covered. I go back in with my Mod Podge around the heart just to make sure it's still covered. And then I'm just going to grab some clear matte paint type of sealer, and I'm just going to spray that front and back. And when you do that, that really brings out that rust. And after that is dry, well, while that's drying, I have some of these little wood buttons in the shape of a flower. I did get these from Hobby Lobby. And then I've got this very pretty pink color. I can't even think of the name of it. I'll put it up here on the screen. But I thought that the center of that little heart needed something more. I just thought it was looking a little bland. So I decided this heart is going to go right in the center, and I'm just going to use some Eileen's Tacky Glue to glue that into place. Now I've got some of these little wood blocks that you can get from the Dollar Tree. You can also get them at Walmart. But I'm going to grab 4 of them, and I'm going to go ahead and paint these in the same white that we painted the little box with. And I'm going to paint all the sides except for one. And if you guys had seen one of my past videos, you know, I sometimes don't pay attention or I get a little overzealous maybe, and I just paint the whole thing without thinking about it. And then I'm like, dang it, I meant to leave one side so I can attach my wood to my surface. Well, I used a pencil to X that spot out so I would not paint it. So yay me. But after those have dried, I'm going to take some gold gilding wax, and I am going to go ahead and cover over what we painted with this wax. And I believe I ended up doing about 2 coats. And then I thought, well, my box is going to need a little gold. So I'm going to go around the top rim of the box with that gold gilding wax. And I'm just going to use this little paintbrush. And I kind of go in between paintbrush and my fingers. I'll wipe some of that excess off from getting off of the edge. So, you know, I don't want too much of that excess. So I will wipe away the sides. I do end up using a paper towel. It makes it a little easier to get that off of where we Mod Podged, because we've still got those sections where we had taken the ink pad to kind of give it a little rust. So I still want that to show as well. And honestly, I think where we kind of distressed it up, and this gold, it just kind of blends together in a way. I don't know, it's really pretty. And then I'm just going to dry all that down with my heat gun. And then after I got that all dried, I was looking at the box and I was like, you know what? I need to go ahead and add some gold inside these little slots, whatever you want to call them as well. And yeah, so that's what I did. And then next I am just going to add my little wood squares or wood blocks to the bottom as the feet. And I'm just going to put it on all four corners, and I'm going to use some wood glue to tack those down with. All right, I got this package of hearts I have picked up from Hobby Lobby, and they've got two different sizes. So I'm going to grab two of the small ones, one of the large ones, and my Americana gel stain in the color walnut. Add a little bit to a cup, and then add some water to that. And then I'm just going to stain these hearts front, back, and along the edges. And guys, I'm sorry this video it's becoming very long. Do me a favor, and in the comment sections, please let me know, was this video too long for 3 projects? I know there's a lot of details that went into a couple of these projects, and I just wanted to touch base on all of it, and then sometimes I get a little chatty. So let me know, do I need to cut the little chattiness out? Or is that okay? Just let me know. Was this video too long? And I also went ahead and grabbed 3 bamboo skewer sticks, and I stained those with the same color. Next, I want to go ahead and attach my little tart pan to the front, and I'm going to go ahead and use my Star Bond glue, and I'm using this stuff is extra strength. It's like super glue, and I'm just going to use a little clamp and clamp that in place and let it dry down. And once that's dried down, I'm just going to grab some flour foam, and I'm going to cut it down to fit into this box. And I also cut it lengthwise down the middle to make it shorter. That way it's not sticking up above those little slots on the side. And then I'm just going to glue it in place with some hot glue. And I'm going to grab some Spanish moss, and I'm going to kind of tuck down into those sides where those slots are. That way you can't see the foam peeking through those slots. All you can see is some Spanish moss, and I just rather see the moss versus the styrofoam or floral foam. And then I've got some boxwood greenery from Walmart, and then I've got this other pick probably from Hobby Lobby, and I am just going to go ahead and put these in our pot. And you guys do you decorate it up, but I'm going to skip forward here just a little bit. And after I get all that greenery the way I like it, I'm going to go ahead and glue the bamboo sticks to the back side of my heart. I'm just using some hot glue, but I'm trying to make it look as clean as possible, because depending on where I set this, you may be able to see the back side of it. So I just want it to look neat. And then I'm going to place that back heart on the back side of my planner. And after I get the sticks glued onto the little ones, I am going to glue those into the front of my planner, and then this project will be complete. And hey guys, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my extremely long video for just 3 DIYs. I really appreciate it. And make sure you go and check out the playlist. And thank you to both Krista and Brenda for having this playlist. And I look forward to seeing everybody on my next video. Have a great day. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.